We are halfway through 2023, so it's time to check in on the technology predictions experts said would happen this year. As you know, technology moves super fast, and the news likes to tout all the investments and future possibilities, but sometimes it's all really far from reality. That's why my guest this week I have is Evelyn Frison. Evelyn is a 360-degree marketer and biracial third culture kid. I love it, who loves exploring identity. Of course, she is amazing at branding and omni-channel marketing. Evelyn's worked for iconic agencies, boutique firms, and growing startups. We are going to have some fun today. But first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast that simplifies complex issues at the intersection of tech and people. There are a lot of them. So whether you're totally hyped on artificial intelligence and you're ready for the robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I'm here with my guest to help make sense of what's going on so you can design yourself into the future. My name is Lindsay. I'm a product market fit strategist, innovation consultant, and venture fundraising advisor. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So let's make sense of how far technology has come in the first half of 2023. Evelyn, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on this.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Me
So,
too.
Evelyn, I owe you a huge shout out and I want to do this on the video podcast. You are the driving force behind the signature lady engineer look, the glasses, the curly hair, all the time. If you look at my YouTube channel, you'll see I show up consistently with this look. Evelyn, can you repeat the advice you gave me about just consistency in your personal brand and style?
Sure. I'll try, which is that, I think great brands are partially built off of consistency because people need something that they recognize, that they feel comfortable with, that they trust. And so having identifiable traits or characteristics or, even physical items are helpful for people to just ground that trust in.
Mhm.
So that's something that I've been a big believer ever since I started a career in marketing,
Right.
and it's a fundamental, um, you know, thing that I come back to time and time again.
100%. I remember you must have given me that advice in 2018. In 2019, I came up to New York for a networking event. You spotted me across the room. You were like, "I know that that's the lady engineer." I could see you from the other side, and I thought that was just so cool. And it's definitely stuff that it's a word of wisdom that I share with founders that I work with as well. As much as I love wearing my hair straight or glasses on, glasses off, I show up consistently online as the lady engineer with the curly hair and the glasses, all thanks to you. So, today we're going to do something special. So, for fans of Make Sense, you know the first segment is almost always crystal ball. What does the future hold? So, reminder crystal ball, this is where I call out interesting predictions for this year, and the experts, my guests, tell us their hot take. So we're so close to our 20th recording that we're dedicating this entire episode to recapping the most often discussed future trends. So, Evelyn, because you're a 360-degree multi-hyphenate marketer who has worked across e-commerce, retail, media, NFTs, and Web3, I am confident you'll be exceptionally good at this. Are you ready?
I'm ready, but I hope that turns out to be true.
Just go forth with as much confidence as possible. It's going to be great. This is how it works. I'm going to bring up each headline, and Evelyn, I want you to say, yes, that is happening, or not quite yet. Okay? Got it.
Okay.
So we're going to take on the batch of e-commerce and retail predictions experts made for 2023. First one, I think this is an easy one right over home plate. You should be able to shoot it out of the ballpark. In-person and online retail will tie the knot. So companies will invest in providing a more seamless experience between shopping online and shopping in person.
Absolutely, 1000%.
Is there anything cool that you see or any brand that's doing it really well?
Camp comes to mind. I think it comes up a lot. But they've just created a very fun, engaging, creative experience. And they managed to be very consistent about that, right? So coming back to that fundamental that we started this episode on, and they're just known for being very interactive and really drawing their audiences in and knowing what they want. And so I
Mhm.
feel that that's like probably one of the best examples. Lego is probably another
Oh,
example.
interesting.
And there's probably a few more that I could name, but we can also, uh, that's a whole deep dive in and of itself, the whole omni-channel, like trends within the omni-channel space.
Yeah, yeah, it's just figuring out how to treat, someone that orders something online and then goes picks it up in person. We got all of this technology because of COVID, and now retailers have to kind of clean up and figure out what to keep and how to continue just to improve that experience, because we're the same person shopping online as we are when we enter the store, right?
Yep. And customer expectations are the same, right? Like if they experience the brand in one way, whether that's online or physical retail, and then, they kind of swap to the other end of things, they expect the same experience all the way through.
Right. Definitely. So hopefully that will keep getting better and better. So online retail, tie the knot. Yes, that is happening. It just depends on where you shop and how tech forward that brand is. All right. So regarding secondhand fashion, there's a trend saying old clothes will make for a big business. So the fashion resale market has tripled. Re-commerce market places like Poshmark are growing, and we're seeing brands partner with them to make
Mhm.
it happen. What do
Yep.
you know?
Um, you know, the growth comes to mind. You just mentioned that, so I don't have to go too far into that, but it's not going to slow down. And I personally think that's just due to the values of the younger generation that I'm
Right.
positioning myself as like an old person, but like, sustainability is becoming more and more of a focal point. That's almost a generic response at this point because it's just so consistently out there now. But the again, younger generations, Gen Z, sustainability is a huge sticking point for them. And so the secondhand fashion destinations, there's so many of them across all the different kind of levels of retail, right? You've got super high end luxury, that market isn't slowing down. And even things like Poshmark that are a mix, that's not slowing down. And I think that there's a real appetite there for secondhand fashion. But in addition to that, there's also a growing interest, and I'm probably going to botch the word because I'm just blanking at the second, but it's where they're taking old fashioned and recreating new pieces from it. And
Upcycling, right?
yes, upcycling. Thank
Upcycling.
you. It was escaping me for a second, but there's been a lot of growth in interest in that area as well. And I think that will just continue to accelerate because not only is it sustainable, but there's like a real creative aspect to it.
Mhm.
I think people are really drawn to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I remember back in the day, like 15, 20 years ago, Urban Outfitters was upcycling t-shirts, making new shirts out of old things. And I'm glad to see, people are revisiting that concept. I personally am a huge fan of this website, and maybe I'll just mention them, and in the future they'll sponsor this podcast. But the website's called 4 Days. They're a big part of the circular economy. You pay $20 to and they will send you a bag with the postage already on it, and you can fill that bag up with all the clothes you don't want, any textiles you don't want, and send it back to them, and they will figure out what to do with it, and you get a $20 credit to their website to shop any of their clothes and their brands. So I think that is really awesome, and a lot of their clothes they make are made out of recycled fibers as well. That's a little different than like secondhand, right? But any type of reduce, reuse, recycle, I think is hitting, like you said, younger generations. But I'm an elder millennial. I'm not sure where you fall. Like we have sustainability in mind too, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's not, yeah, to your point, it's not only Gen Z, it's hitting across all demographics. People
Mhm.
have just become so aware due to, conversations around climate change and like healthy living even, and how that's like better for us from a wellness standpoint. And so there's just a lot of angles in which we can look at it. But in general, that field will continue to grow.
So I'm gonna go after the fashion industry a little more. The fashion industry releases about 10% of the worldwide greenhouse gas emissions
Mhm.
annually. So this trend says that one way designers and manufacturers can reduce their climate impact is by turning to plant-based solutions. So it says that we'll be wearing clothes made from mushrooms and seaweed. Is that happening? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I think that that will also continue to grow. I will say that what consumers will not accept is subpar materials and designs. And so at the end of the day, I think that this is still true. This was true 10 years ago. I had a sustainable apparel brand, and I think it's still true today. You still have to be designed forward. You still have to be audience first. You still have to be on top of trends. That doesn't mean be trendy, but, sort of understand what consumers are looking for. And that comes first. And then sustainability is like a cherry on top. That's where the upcycling comes in again, that creative aspect of it. It's like people are recreating new designs from these, older or vintage pieces. But people are craving those in like interesting trendy designs, and so it's not just because it's sustainable that it's working, it's because of that combination. So yes, those materials are important. I think that they're incredibly interesting, but I think we're still in this like period where consumers are going to be testing that, they're going to be giving feedback, and like we don't know yet how big the market is for that. I could see it growing because materials have been improving. This is like a side note, but I was just thinking, there's like fake silk out there that I almost like can't tell the difference. And I was in fashion, so things are just getting really, really, materials are getting really, really good. And so, again, just to reiterate, I think that that is a really important and interesting and growing field.
Yeah, one of my guests, Devanshi, said she did see a shirt. She was in Lake Como in Italy, and she did see a shirt in a boutique made of seaweed. So I guess it is happening. It's not pervasive. But you also reminded me that I had another guest, Christy Cullinane, who makes lab grown diamonds. So she has a diamond business with lab grown diamonds, and you can't tell the difference either, right? So it is interesting. I'm excited to see if mushrooms are incredibly easy to grow. Seaweed, we have a ton of it. It's a huge untapped resource or underutilized resource on our planet. So I'm excited to see what people can do. I think you tap into something that's really interesting, which is you still have to be fashion forward. I think sometimes and maybe over the past 20 years, I've seen brands that are, using recycled fibers or are vegan or whatever the other trends are, but then they're really just selling like plain shirts, or their whole line is just beige and black. Like it doesn't offer anything exciting. And I think what you're saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that in order to compete with like the general population, that market that's really buying for fashion and sustainability is the bonus, you're really going to have to, it can't just be like, this is a seaweed t-shirt. Like you have to have like a cool design or some other unique value proposition besides seaweed and mushrooms, right?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the unique value proposition and the soul and the heart of a brand. You can be a white t-shirt. People, I mean, there's multiple articles about the best white t-shirt out there. People get very excited about it, right?
I
Um,
can't wear white. I drop everything on me.
but there's a brand for everyone, right? And that's sort
Right.
of what your point was, like, what is the unique value proposition? And that's just really important. And brands have to stay true to who they are while experimenting and bringing in different materials, and also understanding what their audience wants. So maybe an audience does want a white tee, and then you experiment with producing it from carrot fibers or whatever it happens to be. And that demographic would be very excited. But on the other hand, you have big fashion houses, experimenting with cactus leather for their luxury handbags, and that's exciting to a different demographic. So It's just what's so
Wow.
exciting to me is that people are willing to experiment and they're doing it in different ways. And what they just have to keep in mind is understanding what their specific consumer wants. And that comes back to understanding who they are as a brand. So
Right. It
it's all
always comes back to who you are as a brand, which is tightly connected with who you want to serve, your
exactly.
audience. So,
Yeah.
all right, switching gears a little bit. This one came up a few times. Live stream shopping will grow, particularly in the United States. Do you know anything about shoppable content, live stream shopping, kind of like the new frontier of QVC type shopping?
You know what? In preparation for this discussion, I actually started researching that specifically
Yeah.
because it is not an area that I'm an expert in and that I don't have a lot of experience in, but I know that it is a growing trend and I know that it's a quickly growing trend. So I tried to educate myself pretty quickly. And to be honest and transparent, I don't have a lot of thoughts on it yet because I personally haven't experienced it, and I just from either a marketing end or a personal shopping end. I do know that there's a lot of hype around it. I do know that it's working. I know that there's a lot of companies trying to tackle that. So whether that they're emerging new, apps or video streams, or it's being integrated into things like TikTok that already exist. I know that there's an appetite there. I personally, on like just a personal level, I think why I also just don't know a ton about it is, to me it's very overwhelming and I don't like to shop that way. But you even raising this question makes me think I really need to get into it a little bit more and just experiment myself because it's not going away.
Well,
I think that there's an entertainment value to it that is significant. So it's almost not only about the shopping. It's really about the entertainment value, the connection, the idea that it's live. It's very dynamic, which is not a typical e-commerce experience, right? As you're scrolling through a web page, and that can be really exciting, especially when they start to incorporate consumer or customer feedback. Like I have watched a little bit, and they do it in real time, and they'll give shout outs to people, and that's very exciting for some. And Again, I can just see it growing. I just personally don't have a ton of experience with it.
yeah, sure, sure. So, for those of you listening, there is another episode with Liz Kressel, who is a live stream shopping expert, and she did talk about how a brand will that wants to do live shopping, they're not just like a QVC or home shopping network where they're talking about the product and only talking about the product and maybe a little bit of chit chat, but just that. They really come up with a piece of content around those products that they want to talk about, like soda water's effects on your your internal organs or something like that. And then they like talk about the soda water brand that they have, but they're also educating their audience on a broader topic. And to your point, they encourage existing customers to get into the comments and share their thoughts, and then new customers can ask questions, and you're letting the community kind of do the selling for you. I think there's definitely some places where in some types of products where they're really category makers. They're really disrupting the space. One that we've both worked on is brilliantly, the full body warmth heating pads that women can wear in their bras, right? This is a very new concept to people. So having a live stream shopping experience, and maybe me and you will collaborate on that sometime, could help buyers that are on the edge thinking about it, push them over that edge, because they can actually see it in real time and ask questions to other people that own that product. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's
very
exciting.
engaging. It's very engaging and entertaining, and so I see the value in it.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully we can experiment with it ourselves sometime and see how it goes. All right. So we've got like two more shopping ones or retail ones. So the retail industry will renew its focus on tracking technologies,
Mm-hmm.
trying to improve personalization will be a massive win for them, but they will face a lot of challenges given the crackdown on data privacy regulations. So where is there room to get more custom without impeding on people's privacy?
I think this comes back to some of the things that you've already raised in this discussion. The live shopping, just to tie it back to that, it mostly because it's so engaging and there's definitely opportunity for like one-on-one conversations or, even group discussions. And gaining information from things like that would be so valuable, right?
Mhm.
I think that's probably, again, while it's not my area of expertise, I would imagine from the other side, whoever is hosting these live shopping events does actually gain immediate insight to customer reactions, what they want, what they like, what they don't like. And it's things like that that I think will help supplement a lot of the data that could be restricted due to those privacy concerns. I do think that, you know, community is a word that's thrown around a lot. So I'm not sure how much we want to get into that because there's different ways to cut that up and look at it. But I do think, let's just say broadly speaking, and from community is going to become even more important. That's been a buzzword, for a very long time now. A lot of brands try to form these communities. With a ranging scale of success. Glossier comes to mind because they are one of the
Hmm.
beauty brands that have done it the best. I mean, the brand was really built from community. It like started
Interesting.
from a sense of
I
community.
don't know their backstory.
Yeah,
Could you give us like a short clip
sure.
of
The
it or
I
review
mean,
of
the
it?
founder, basically, she was very into beauty, and was basically online. She had her own personal blog, and kind of a merging media platform at that point. And she would talk about beauty and like really listen into the feedback that people gave her, and they exchanged, what's it called? They exchanged like reviews and, like did their own reviews of products and things like that. And she started to develop products based on all that discussion.
Yeah.
And so that's, I hope I got this right because I haven't studied them in a while, but that's really the foundation of Glossier. And that's why the brand has become so successful, is because they actually always have kept community at the heart of the brand. They like check in with their community when they develop new products.
Yeah, that's
So,
awesome. I love that
yeah,
because I always tell people keep your customers really close and they will design the product that you will just finesse and sell right back to them
I
if you
mean,
do it right.
yeah, it sounds like you just intuitively knew that. And it sounds like, I believe her name is Emily, the founder of Glossier, I think. But she seems to have intuitively known that. And my point in raising this is that brands can use their communities to source really great information that then drives marketing efforts and messaging strategy, product development, additional opportunities in terms of maybe events being, an arm of the company. So there's a lot there that can be mined.
Mhm.
So that comes to mind in terms of like the idea of like getting around some of the privacy issues.
I
Um,
I think there's two things I want to jump in on. One, a brand that is really good at community is also Porsche. So I did some research at usability testing 7 years ago. I interviewed 30 people that own different luxury car brands, and the communities organically that create around Porsches, whether they're on Facebook or Reddit. People even said they like hanging out at the dealership while their car is being worked on because they like talking to other owners about their products. So that's one example of a community around a brand. But to bring it back to the personalization thing, I think what's still true today that has been true for decades is that big retail companies have a ton, they might have a ton of information on us, but they don't have yet the technology to really use all of that information in smart ways. So I think for anyone that's like nervous about improving personalization, I don't think it's going to impede incredibly on your privacy. For instance, I'm just taking an example. A friend of mine bought a dress online from Nordstrom Rack, went to Nordstrom Rack to pick it up, tried it on, it didn't fit, right? I don't know yet if Nordstrom Rack is saying, okay, that dress, this size, that brand, this size, this customer, this dress style, we're going to update the recommendations that we give this customer the next time they log in and are shopping. They have all that data to do that, but they might not yet have the technology resources to write those algorithms to update their personalization. Right now, you might be shopping online and it just shows you similar products based on what you've looked at, not based on a profile necessarily that they've built up about you based on all your previous transactions. So I'm sure some retailers are doing it better than others, but I also just want to let everyone know that it's not coming. There's a lot of data you already give them that they're not yet using. So you're not, don't worry about your privacy being impeded too greatly. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I went
That
on a little diatribe.
Well, this is super interesting and very relevant to the theme of this discussion, because that's where AI is going to come in, right? So some things that are coming out are how AI will help you digitally try on clothing. That's a
Sure.
personalization aspect. You can have these profiles that you take from brand to brand, and it will automatically, I mean, the goal is that it will automatically know whether it will fit you the way that you want it to fit and look the way you want it to look. And so I think, to your point, it's not quite there yet, but we're headed that direction. So I
Yeah.
think that it's definitely going to come sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So, last headline in the retail and e-commerce space. So, earlier this year, a startup named Imperia raised a $10 million Series A to create virtual reality shopping experiences. So, will we be shopping in the metaverse? Is anyone shopping in the metaverse right now? And will we like it?
Ooh, is anyone shopping right now in the metaverse? That's a tricky question because yes and no. Um, and I have my own thoughts on the metaverse and how that's sort of
Well,
being
do
rolled
share
out.
them. Don't hold back.
Oh, well, I think that the metaverse is a really creative, fun, experimental space. I think a lot of companies are trying to figure it out. None of this is a profound statement, but there are examples, although I think pretty rare examples of very successful launches within that space. Like Nike obviously has done a ton, Adidas, things like that. And then other brands are experimenting with maybe less degrees of success, but does that matter right now? Because it is still so new and consumers aren't even used to it. Like, how many people do you know actually have even been in the metaverse in any capacity? I mean, I have, just due to my old, some of my previous
Right, right.
engagements, but I'm not sure I would have sort of like naturally found my way there. Maybe out
Hmm.
of curiosity, but that's different than having a drive to go in and shop and explore, right?
Right.
So, um, there's a lot of emerging companies that will help other companies build their presence in the metaverse. And I was looking at some numbers, and they're not, from a marketer's point of view, the strongest ROI. But again, does that matter? It can fall under R&D, right? And so
Hmm.
I think it's more important to experiment as a brand. You shouldn't necessarily focus on the numbers right now because um, everything's just so new. But going back to your original question in terms of like how that will play out for people specifically with e-commerce, I we will get there. I don't know on what timeline, but I was just reading about Apple's headset, and one of
Hmm.
the first practical applications that this particular journalist wrote about was like shopping and doing e-commerce via the headset, and they said it was a great experience. And
Mm.
so, you know, it just came out, so there's not like a ton of information out there yet. And it all falls under the bucket of just being experimental. But we're making such huge leaps and bounds with all this AI stuff, um, with all these different technologies, and that experience is just going to get so much more rich and engaging. And I could see a future where um, people will naturally want to do that because it will emulate this sort of like cross section between going into a physical store and then shopping digitally, like scrolling a website.
Sure.
It'll be more fun. Now the adoption of that headset is limited, right? Because it's very expensive.
Well, right. And that's why we haven't seen Meta and Facebook get very far, because everything they're building is using the Oculus. So
Yeah.
until there's widespread Oculus adoption, they're going to have a problem getting people into their version of the metaverse. So I think in the past 17 episodes, this is the metaverse and the applications of the metaverse have come up more and more. One episode with a friend, a graduate school friend of mine, Chris Voltz, he worked for Second Life, which was
Mhm.
Linden Labs, so I had been just wanting to talk to him and be like, is the metaverse anything new, or is it just Second Life, right? And it's pretty close. If you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to go listen to that one. But I did, I think, in a conversation with Katie McKee, who's also an e-commerce expert. We talked about one application I think I would really, really like is makeup displays. So yeah, so I think that makeup companies, if you go into any, pharmacy, the setup of Revlon's section, L'Oreal section, Maybelline section, it's well thought out, right?
Mhm.
And those products are placed next to each other for reasons, and you can really see the hues as they go from light to dark for every product. And I feel like that experience, I'm really craving that online. So I can kind of compare shades to each other and compare different, liquid foundations that L'Oreal has to offer. And like you said, scrolling down a page doesn't really afford that same experience.
There's a lot of beauty brands that are making headway specifically in AI, because, again, of that sort of like try on ability. Right now, the clothing stuff still needs to be worked on, and that's more complicated. But beauty is like relatively easy. That came out weird. It's not easy, but I mean, even 4 years
It's
ago.
ahead of its time. I've seen
Yeah.
plenty of startups really trying to help people match their skin tone to the right foundations and products online, whether that's taking a picture and
Mhm.
then processing the
Yep.
picture, and stuff like that.
Um, Even 3 or 4 years ago, I was in a. This is pre-COVID, so it was a while
Mhm.
ago, and there was a Sephora that had a screen, and you could walk in front of the screen and you could choose sort of different makeup palettes that it would apply to your face.
Oh,
And I'm not
cool.
even a beauty junkie, but I stood in front of that thing and like played around because it still looked a little cartoonish, but it was like decently accurate and like pretty fun to mess around. And beauty is known for being expressive and fun and creative, and so it's a natural fit that a lot of the beauty brands would start experimenting with these technologies, and it seems like a very seamless.
And that technology specifically, just for people that are listening, we toss around a lot of terms, but that technology is augmented reality, and people, you would be surprised how comfortable everyone is with AR. If you've used any Snapchat filters, if you used any Instagram filters, any of those things, TikTok, that is augmented reality, right?
Yeah.
And so that experience really is here. And I think the trend that we might see in the future is actually shopping in a totally 3D environment, whether that's with a headset or just through your screen on your computer or your phone. And so we are already, plenty of people are already shopping with AR.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. That's a great point.
Cool. So now we're going to move into some more Web3 trends, although we just talked about the metaverse, and that's for sure in the Web3
Mhm.
space. So let's start. let's start with something that I actually don't know much about, and maybe you do. I love to learn. So, despite crypto's trust crisis, leaders will push for widespread adoption by enhancing security, reliability, and user experience.
Um,
Do you think they can overcome the widespread the trust crisis from last year and the fallout from FTX?
yes, there's enough of a foundation there and enough of a very passionate audience to continue driving that space forward. Um, it's coming in waves, and I think everyone recognizes that. But there is a very loyal base, and I don't see that going away.
Yeah, I think what surprises me is, out in the real world, it was the random places, not in the very tech forward areas of my city, Philadelphia, that have crypto ATMs and, and other self-service, in a 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts. So that stuff exists to kind of drive the widespread adoption. I did like what another guest, Melly Chow, said, which is, cash is a very hard product to replace. So if you think of cash as a product that users have adopted over the couple thousand years or so, like it's going to be very hard to replace that. So what we might just see is more increased adoption and a specific role for crypto, but maybe not a total replacement.
Yeah, that I would agree with that. And to be transparent, I am not an expert in crypto. I did work in Web3 mainly with NFTs, so
Mm-hmm.
several NFT marketplaces, for example. And that is a
And
very
NFT marketplaces require crypto, right? Is that crypto like the preferred kind of uh, currency to
yes,
exchange in
yes,
NFTs?
it
Right.
is. So it's inherently involved, but in terms of understanding things from a broader like financial like global
Systems. Yeah, we're not
financial
gonna. Yeah.
perspective. That's not something that I have like a true expertise in. Again, it is involved in some of the things I've done, but um, what I know more about that space is like the audience and
Mm-hmm.
how again, I mentioned how loyal that audience can be. And it is a small niche audience. I think being in Philly and New York, there was it did blow up over the last few years, crypto
We are
and
still the
NFT.
liberal, coastal,
Right,
overeducated elite over here, aren't we?
right. And I think that there was a momentum here and a hunger and an appetite here that definitely existed in other areas across the world, but probably just not at the same intensity as like
Mhm.
middle America. I mean, even here, a lot, I would say like 90%, 98% of my friends were very skeptical. They didn't want to take the time to learn more about it than what they might read in the headlines. And so this comes back to, this idea of widespread adoption. I don't think it'll ever reach like a critical mass, but I do think that it's going to stick around and be
Yeah.
like an important part of um you know a global finances.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Let's go on to the next headline. So, back to the metaverse again. So, this is saying that metaverse will go professional. So, despite, VR, this headline is interesting to me because it says despite AR, VR being still in their infancy, but I worked on my first virtual reality project in 2003. So to say VR is in its infancy, I don't find that is true. I find VR adoption is in its infancy. Maybe yeah, yeah. So um, this is saying, so despite AR, VR adoption still being in their
Mhm.
infancy, we're going to see more professions use the technology for training, like training pilots, surgeons, and emergency responders.
Yeah, This reminds me, okay, I have not really read a ton of sci-fi, a little bit here and there, but I think about this almost daily, which is
Mhm.
I read Ender's Game, which
Tell
is
us.
like a classic
Okay.
sci-fi novel. And, you know, I don't want to give it away for people who haven't read it, but there's like gaming or like a VR, AR aspect to it that is you like, you know, comes into warfare training, you know.
Hmm.
I think about that all the time because uh we have gotten to that point. You know, that book, I
Yeah.
don't even know, it was probably written like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but it predicted something that is becoming more and more true every day. And I have a lot of friends in in like the medical field, and they, you know, they kind of keep me abreast of what's going on there in terms of like different technologies, like robots doing surgeries, right? Like I know someone who's a pediatric surgeon, and he basically in many cases uses like a robot arm. This is
Mhm.
obviously not the technical terms for things, um,
Wait, hey,
but
hey, we're just trying to make it make sense for other people, right? We don't have to be the most technical. We're just making sense of this stuff. So
yeah,
don't
uh,
worry about it.
yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that because you know a lot of yeah, I just don't have like the vernacular to describe some of these things, but yeah, I'm
Robot arms in in surgery rooms is happening. I actually have seen startups who reviewed that. I have reviewed startups for Techstars and other investors that are training emergency responders. They can send out a drone to go collect the imagery of really, really remote places, uh, pull that into a headset, and then train emergency responders without having to bring those emergency responders all the way out to those remote places. So I've definitely seen that. I've also seen VR, AR being used in training surgeons. I saw a startup that was an ed tech startup for med schools to help kind of if they were working on kind of like a dummy body, but they would have some augmented reality layered on top of that to train them on different types of use cases that might happen in an operation room. So this stuff is this
I
stuff
can't
is happening.
I can't wait for it to become even more ubiquitous because it's not only training, like education's a part of training, right? And, you know, people learn in so many different ways. And I think that this would just help more people learn about the topics that they care about and need to know and like just make it a lot more fun and accommodate a lot of different styles of learning. So just a small anecdote, like I'm currently reading or like doing personal training certification just for fun as like a hobby.
I had
Um,
my PT certification when I was in grad school. I taught step aerobics.
oh my God, do
If
you
you
have
didn't know that about me.
that? But I am so happy to learn that. We need to sidebar because I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to use this. Um, I kind of did it just because I want to challenge myself in like going through this an official program. And also I have a deep interest in the health and wellness space. And I'm actually very
Sure.
curious about how Web3 will intersect with that. And that's like a whole different discussion. But I'm like reading this dry ass material like on the NASA website, just like scrolling through because I didn't even buy like the physical textbook. And I'm just like, I can do it, right? Like I can sit
Mhm.
here, I can take notes, I can read, but if I had this opportunity to learn in like an interactive environment and like have some like you know a demonstration or like
Right.
you know even be able to sort of like walk through the human body like Miss Fizzle style from the Magic School Bus, like I would much prefer that because I think
100%.
that again I'm a visual learner and I also learn by doing, and so I feel like that would help bridge the gap there for me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so yes, AR, VR, metaverse, going professional. So I want to end on a really hot topic these days, and already know that I have more guests that want to talk about this from different angles. But artificial intelligence will not replace you, but a person using it will.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's accurate. I
I
mean,
love how just like you're like, yes, and we
yeah, I
shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
right? That was
I am
that
not
was your
surprised.
facial reaction for anyone listening. Evelyn's facial
Yeah.
reaction was just like, yeah, duh.
I mean, that's where we're headed. The interesting thing to me, so I run a little marketing group, and we've discussed this recently, um, and no one necessarily feels threatened by it because I think maybe it's like self curation. Like everyone I that's in sort of my world has is sort of like a practical person, and you kind of just see what's in front of you, and um, you just sort of see what's in front of you, and then you just make decisions based on that, on how to navigate it. But everyone's also very curious, like in my circle. And so the reason I'm emphasizing this is because I know a lot of marketers, and everyone is very practical, but everyone's very curious, and everyone has just 1000% dove in to like understand what's happening there.
Hmm.
So the most the easiest replacement you would think would be like a writer. And I know
Hmm.
several writers, they know more about all this technology than I do because they just
Yeah,
dove right in, and they're like, it makes my day so much more efficient that I'm a
right,
better writer. So they're not scared of it, and they're just taking it head on. And this is a little bit of a different, different feedback than you were saying, just being replaced. I think that will be true. You don't need 10 writers anymore. You probably need three if
right.
you're doing content production and all this stuff. But the reality of the world is that it's just becoming more competitive anyway. So like this was going to happen
Right,
on in some way, shape, or form.
right.
So I think the best way to address it, if you are worried, is to get ahead of it and learn about all these things
Exactly.
and use it to your advantage.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. I think that's a great note to end on, which is don't be scared of artificial intelligence. It's actually in the background doing a lot of amazing things for a lot of our different systems that support our daily lives, whether it's government or finance or any other utilities. And the reality is that for it's going to take a while before AI fully replaces, I think, a specific career or role.
Yep.
But people knowing how to use it and leverage it, like a content writer who's like, I can now produce more, or I can feed AI a blog post I wrote, and then it will give me what the Instagram caption should be. It will give me what the LinkedIn post should be, like reusing that content. It's already their original work. AI is just helping them shorten it up or, reformat it for different purposes.
Yep.
So if someone can do their job faster than you because they can use these tools, then that's the next step of competition. So AI may eventually replace many of us, uh, but if we're looking at just the 1 year horizon, it's really about a person using it will replace you.
Yep.
You agree?
Yeah,
I
I
can tell
agree.
you're thinking a lot, so just wondering.
What'd you say?
I said I can tell you're thinking a lot, so I was just wondering if like you agree or not, because maybe if there's something else you want to share, go for it.
No, I completely agree. I actually don't even have much more to add, just because I like that's been my experience so far, and like um I can see that coming in terms of this idea of being replaced by somebody that really understands it. um I think that's probably already happening. And But the thing is, again, I'm personally just not scared about it because I see it as an opportunity. I It's not going to slow down anyway, so you might as well just try your best to adapt and learn about it. And again, I'm sort of going in circles now, but it's mostly because I agree with you, and so I
Mhm.
don't have necessarily that much to add. I think it's exciting.
Well, I will tell everyone, I'll share with you and share with everyone. I saw, the George Clinton, the musician from, the Parliament Funkadelics. I saw him speak back in 2014 or 15 in Brooklyn, and he's had a really long career. He's 81 years old, and it's still like relevant in the music industry. And what he said 9 years ago was, you can't get corny. You can't get stale. When the young kids start doing something new, start experimenting in different ways, bringing new, in his case, new forms of music, new forms of instrumentation. If you get corny and stale, you're just gonna phase out. But if you embrace it, then you elongate your career and make yourself continually relevant. So we'll go with
Yeah.
that. All
You
right.
know what? On that note, just to bring it full circle and we can close, I gotta get on the real shop, the live shopping train.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we talked about how that will continue to be a thing, and I don't know much about it, and so maybe this weekend I'll try to get online and like do a little bit of window shopping via live shopping.
Yeah. 100%. So let's make it make sense for all of you. A few big takeaways. E-commerce and retail, more lively, more personal, more seamless between online and in person. The metaverse, it's still kind of struggling to find problems that the general consumer wants solved, but there are some niche areas where it's really advancing. And artificial intelligence, its capabilities are incredible, but it might not be ready to replace you right now, today. But until it can, you better add it to your toolbox. So thank you for listening to Make Sense with me, your host, Lindsay Tabith, and guest, Evelyn Frison. We hope you enjoy our take on a whole bunch of technology predictions that were made for this year. Evelyn, where can people find you online?
They can find me at frisonmarketing.com, and that's FRISON marketing.com.
Thank you for the clarification. That will definitely be in the show notes. Final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits. On YouTube, hit that subscribe for next week's episode. And for audio only, follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Evelyn, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.